When talking about Westerosi history in the context of House of the Dragon, we gotta keep in mind that our starting point is year 1 AC, that is after Conquest. What conquest, you ask? Well, Aegon's conquest of the Seven Kingdoms, which brought all kingdoms under one rule. But did it? You see, the Targaryen monarchs titled themselves as
Lady of the Seven Kingdoms,
but they were in truth one kingdom short of 7. Once Aegon's conquest was all said and done, the Dornishmen stood true to their words, unbowed, unbent, and unbroken. And it was all thanks to the unwavering will of Princess Meria Martell. Now, before you nerds Google her nudes, I have to caution you that at the time of Aegon's conquest, the princess was an extremely fat 80-year-old woman with balding hair, had gone blind and so wrinkled that she was nicknamed the Yellow Toad by Argilac, the then king of Stormlands. When Meria Martell exactly assumed power or who her predecessors were is unknown. What we do know is that at the beginning of the conquest she was around 80 and had assumed power at 20 years of age. When Aegon sent ravens to all rulers of the Seven Kingdoms, Dorne and the Vale were the only houses to offer alliance. The Dornish princess's counter-offer of joining the war against the Stormlands as an equal ally without subjecting to his authority did not impress Aegon though. As far as he was concerned, Dorne was defying his will just like all the other kingdoms. When Aegon set out to conquer Westeros, he split his forces into 3 main efforts. Oris Baratheon, Aegon's BFF, led the biggest force south to take Storm's End, with Rhaenys providing air support on her dragon Meraxes. The fleet was sent north to take the Vale of Arryn. Aegon himself took a smaller force and marched for Harrenhal. Long story short, once Aegon was done defeating the major players and sent a message through his victories to those who contemplated resistance still, he sent out his sisters to the Vale and Dorne to try the dragon diplomacy. Visenya flew to the Vale and Rhaenys to Dorne. Dorne is accessible by land only through a corridor in the Red Mountains called the Prince's Pass, although there is also a narrow, difficult to traverse pathway called the Boneway, which lies close to the shore of the Sea of Dorne, but more on that later. When Rhaenys reached the Prince's Pass, she encountered an army of Dornishmen guarding it. But since walking is for plebeians, Rhaenys simply flew over their heads and set off for the nearest major hall, that was Waith. To her surprise, Rhaenys found the castle empty of any inhabitants. The town of Waith itself was also a mystery, as only women, children and old frail men were to be found. Rhaenys' inquiries about the whereabouts of the small folk's lords bore no fruit either. Away was the only thing the common people had to say when pushed by Rhaenys. Queen Consort did not stop there though. She followed the river Greenblood all the way to the sea, but found all castles and towns in the same state as Waith. Rhaenys suspected the Dornishmen had decided to gather all their strength at Sunspear, the capital of their Red Princedom. Therefore she flew straight to the port city. To her surprise, Sunspear was abandoned just as well. However, Rhaenys found Princess Meria, the Yellow Toad Martell, waiting for her. I will not fight you, nor will I kneel to you. Dorne has no king. Tell your brother that, the princess said to the queen when they came face to face. After Rhaenys promised to bring fire and blood to Dorne, the princess was not impressed either. Your words, our words, unbowed, unbent, unbroken. You may burn us, my lady, but you will not bend us, break us, or make us bow. This is Dorne. You are not wanted here. Return at your peril. And return did Rhaenys, preceding Oris Baratheon again, who led 1,000 elite knights through the treacherous Boneway, and Aegon's 30,000-strong army approaching from the Prince's Pass. It's safe to say that Rhaenys Targaryen kept her word and brought fire and blood. Mostly fire, since most denizens of the Planky towns sought shelter. It is said that Rhaenys killed fewer than 100, and most of them from drowning, rather than dragonfire. After the burning of Planky Town, Rhaenys flew to a few more towns, and since there were no lords or any nobles of any kind, she made women and children swear fealty to Aegon and House Targaryen. Oris Baratheon, on the other hand, did not have such an easy trip as Rhaenys. Oris, now Hand of the King, soon found out that bringing fine horses to traverse slopey and rocky terrain was a bad idea. The war horses flat out refused to move when facing the steeper parts of the Boneway passes. Oris's knight got crushed under boulders which fell from above, seemingly at the hands of an invisible enemy. And when the enemy showed themselves, it was in the form of archers raining death down upon the Stormlanders as they crossed the narrow bridge. When they tried to retreat, the Dornishmen blocked their way by throwing down a massive boulder. The Battle of Willbridge was mostly a slaughter, as the Knights of Storm's End were pricked full of arrows until only Orys Baratheon and several other lords worthy of ransom remained. As it turned out, the captor was a savage mountain lord called Widowlover. More on the lover of women with dead spouses later. Unlike Orys, Aegon mostly steamrolled through Dorne, right after emerging from the Prince's Pass. But it has to be said that his passage through the pass was not uneventful. The Dornish had retreated long before the main army, going full scorched earth mode, setting fire to anything that could be eaten and poisoning anything that could be drunk. Just to rub Aegon's face in it, they went as far as barring narrow passes in his way by piling up thousands of slaughtered, shorn and rotten sheep on top of each other. Once he emerged from the Prince's Pass, Aegon split his army into two, assigning Lord Harlan Tyrell with the task of winning Hellholt. The Lord of the Reach had a mighty host of mounted knights and foot soldiers to crush any resistance Lord of Hellholt might put up. Yet the real enemy, one Harlan had not prepared his army for, was the scorching sun and ruthless tactics of the Dornishmen. Despite it being mid-autumn, the Dornish dunes were baking hot and the air dry as sticks, leading man and animal to drink up much more water. As Lord Tyrell's supply of water dwindled, every well they encountered turned out to have been poisoned. Unable to turn back, the army of the Reach continued its miserable march. Knights who had started the campaign in their plate and mail armor took them off as not to cook inside them. Bannermen dropped their banners to unburden themselves. Soldiers dropped their shields. But with no water to drink, man and horse started dying by the thousand. By the time Lord Tyrell reached Hellholt to find its walls unmanned and the castle abandoned, he had already lost 25% of his soldiers and pretty much all the horses. Aegon himself, after the split, nudged his army eastward to make use of the water runoff of the foothills and the plentiful game in the valleys. On his way, he stormed Skyreach and took the castle by force, then quickly set out for the next fort, Ironwood, which he broke into after the small garrison inside put up a brief resistance. Aegon's swift march east took him to the Tor. The castle had recently lost its lord, and his steward knew better than to put up a fight, so he easily surrendered, letting Aegon keep up his quick capture of swathes of Dornish territory. Aegon the Conqueror's last stop before turning his attention towards the capital was Ghost Hill, where he finally faced the Dornish lord who had not fled before his might. Lord Toland sent his champion and challenged Aegon to single combat. The warrior king naturally picked up the gauntlet and duly killed him in the subsequent duel. However, upon close inspection of the body, he realized the man he had killed was Lord Toland's fool, not his champion. The Lord of Ghost Hill turned out to have fled after all. Understandably pissed off, Aegon, who had enough of this farce of a resistance they had put up, got on Balerion and flew straight to Sunspear, only to find his sister with her hands on her hips. The yellow toad has melted into the sands, Rhaenys is said to have remarked to her husband. The king replied by announcing that his campaign was completed successfully and declared Dorne had been conquered. Aegon made the commanders of his forces stewards and castellans of the forts he had captured and gave them new titles. Namely, Lord Rosby became Castellan of Sunspear and Warden of the Sands, pretty much replacing Meria Martell. Aegon reportedly came back the same way he had come, which might not sound so significant, but it does bring me to my next point. If we look at his route more closely, we can see that it runs parallel to the coast of the Sea of Dorne in the north and the foothills in the south. At first, it would look like his best route would have been following either the rivers Skerge or Vaith and then Greenblood. I believe Aegon planned the best route as an invading army in an unknown hostile territory. By staying in close proximity to the sea, he made sure to have an optional supply route, which could also serve as an escape route in case of disaster. Although it's not mentioned in Fire and Blood, I highly doubt Aegon the Conqueror committed such a huge host to the conquest of Dorne without making use of the Velaryon fleet. Even if he forgot about his fleet, staying close to the sea meant that he would not have to worry about getting ambushed on his northern flank. On his southern side, the mountains do pose a threat of ambushes, yet unlike Orys Baratheon, Aegon did not need to go through the mountains, but only to use it as a shield to cover his southern side. As you can imagine, it was not long after Aegon had arrived at King's Landing that the Dornishmen emerged from their holes and swarmed the castles they had supposedly lost to Aegon's lords. They swiftly took back Skyreach, Ironwood, the Tor, and Ghost Hill, kill all their garrisons, and torture the newly appointed castellans to death. It is said that the Dornish lords had a handsome wager on who could keep their castellan alive longer as they removed their body parts one by one. As for the castellan of Sunspear, Lord Rosby, he fared a little better. Once the Dornishmen recaptured the castle, they bound and gagged him and then took him to the highest level, where the Toad Princess personally shoved Lord Rosby out of a window. And that's it for part 1 of this 2-part video. Next part will conclude the story of how Princess Meria the Yellow Toad Martell resisted Aegon, his sisters and their dragons and armies, staying true to House Martell's words, unbent and unbroken. I hope you enjoyed watching this. Make sure to tickle that like button, leave a comment on what you think of how the first invasion of Dorne turned out, and what you would do if you were Aegon or the princess. Also, please subscribe to my channel, it helps motivate me to make more videos.